California's prison population has been downsized by way of a law known as Assembly Bill 109.
Many misdemeanor jail inmates are getting out early.
The state is basically taking its problem and then just dumping it on the county.
Its number was 109, a state assembly bill, AB 109.
Assembly Bill 109.
Lawmakers passed it in 2011. At the time, state leaders said it was necessary.
I think we can all acknowledge we have a failed, very expensive system currently.
Local government said it would be a disaster.
In the end, this is a serious concern. All of those complaints aside, we're stuck with it.
Either way, it was one of the most significant pieces of legislation passed in decades. What it did was shift responsibility for thousands of state prisoners, making it counties' jobs to house and supervise them. This shift was called public safety realignment. The idea was to save the state a lot of money at a time when budget deficits were huge, and also ease the burden on the state's overcrowded prisons. So the state turned to counties to help solve its long-standing problem. Counties had to do something. So we met with our criminal justice partners and came up with a plan quickly. A plan to handle what was a very serious threat to public safety. Step one of the plan, be very efficient with our jail space. Jails are not cheap to build and operate, so maximize every square inch of space you have already, and use new custody options for low-level offenders, while making sure the most dangerous criminals are off the streets.
Prior to realignment, we had 800 beds to 1,000 beds that were available, and inmates that were sentenced to county jail spent a year or less. Today, we've added about 1,700 to our population due to realignment, and there is no limit to the amount of time a person can spend in county jail. County jails just weren't designed to house people for this long period of time, and it's pushed our population up.
Next, we decided to put the re-entry process in the jails, like the 400-bed re-entry facility we're building at the East Mesa Jail. This helps inmates transfer to life in the community. The offender gets services in jail and is released with connections to support in the community, reducing the chance the inmate just winds up back in jail.
Prior to realignment, our mission in the jails was pretty simple. We provided professional detention services in a safe and humane environment. We know we can't build our way out of this. The sheriff has developed a reentry services division geared toward providing vocational, educational, drug, alcohol, and cognitive-based therapy for inmates. No longer do we just constitutionally incarcerate and gain compliance. Now we have to expand our mission to change behavior. Through changing behavior, our hope is that we'll reduce recidivism and drive our population down.
Step 3 was to use techniques we know are successful when it comes to supervising offenders, making sure they receive services that address the root of their crimes. We hired more than 100 probation staff, creating a post-release offender division to hold them accountable and help link them to these services. We also put probation officers with deputies and police officers in the community.
Probation, fourth waiver.
And are using technology to do a better job of tracking known offenders, and crime analysis tools to help all law enforcement agencies share information on offenders.
We use research-supported practices in both the way we supervise offenders in the community as well as sentencing to reduce recidivism. We have put tools in place to assess offenders' risk to reoffend as well as their needs. From these, a dynamic case plan is developed and the offenders are linked to services.
Working with offenders, identifying potential issues early, and steering offenders in the right direction so when they transition out into society, the chance of recidivism goes down.
Those are words that this culture uses as fighting words and threatening words, so we don't use that.
The DA and probation teamed up to start a community transition center. Offenders released to local supervision are first brought here to get a handle on who they are and what they need.
Because a lot of us don't know any other way. So when we come out here, it is important.
They got my family back into my life. I couldn't have did it by myself.
It's allowed me to be able to have a slower transition back into society without all the pressures.
Meeting student, come to order. This court is now in session.
We created a brand new collaborative court and supervision model, Sheriff, probation, DA, and public defender all helping offenders stick to a plan once they're released. When offenders follow a positive course, we're all safer.
In January of 2013, we started mandatory supervision court. This is a court for all of the offenders who receive a split sentence. Prior to being released, they go through the courtroom process, we look at what they've done in custody, and we come up with a plan for what they'll do in the community in order to try to help reduce recidivism.
So you need to focus on that. Probation's going to work with you.
Working together as a collaborative, we can have more success with offenders because we can look at them as individuals. We have all the components of the criminal justice system combined with the court to really address the underlying issues, hold people accountable, and make them feel like they're a part of their recovery.
To deal with public safety realignment, there are a lot of different moving parts, a lot of different agencies involved. Prosecutors, probation, attorney, the state, the offenders themselves. The only way this works is with a lot of strategic planning and open communication with all the parties involved. It's not easy, but when you have an organization like ours that's strong financially, managed well, with great employees, we can address challenges like realignment. There's a lot more work to do and risks to face and challenges to overcome due to public safety realignment.
Whatever's said in group,
stays in group.
Whose house?
Light